So I'm giving you 2 months warning that I'm going to start those classes at 8 o'clock. I got to do it, but you're going to end early, obviously. You're going to end probably like 9:30. But on those two dates, November 15th, November 22nd, tell your friends, we're going to start at 8, and we'll end at about 9:30. I know it's a bit of a pain in the neck, but you know, you do your holiday shopping nice and early. You'll be out, ready to go. Go line up for an iPhone, whatever you got to do. But you get out of here nice and early, okay? So those 2 dates, I'm giving you 2 months warning. Now, here's the deal. I will not mark you late if you show up at 9 o'clock those days. But you're only going to get a half an hour of the lecture. That's not good, but you know, I'm not going to mark you late because you just got to get the notes from someone else. Because some of you guys might have a long travel time to get here. I understand that there might be issues that you've clocked your time a particular way. And I'm not going to penalize you. The only responsible to get the notes from someone else. Do we understand? Okay, I think that's reasonable. All right, let's do constitutional law. And I started it last class. This is chapter 4. And again, let's go into the Constitution. Let's go into the Bill of Rights. The Constitution was adopted September 17th. So we almost just had the anniversary of 1787. There were 13 colonies that became 13 states, and there was a preamble, an opening statement, if you will, to the Constitution, which is extraordinarily important, and we're going to read it now. We, starts out with, we the people. In other words, the government is the people. We the people of the United States, 13 colonies became united in order to form a more perfect union, to become one country instead of 13 individual states. Because some leaders of government wanted each state to be an individualized entity. For various reasons. There was different ideology at the time. Remember where the colonists came to. Now look at history. Some came to Massachusetts, right? You gotta think of the harbors on the East Coast. Some came to Massachusetts. Some came to New York. Some came to Philadelphia. So you got Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, and then you have the Virginia area. So the people that came here were from different, they were from like the same part of England. They were belonged to a church, let's say. So they were together. And they wanted to then unite, saying, you know what, we have 13 colonies. We come from 13 backgrounds. Some of us, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? We come from 13 different backgrounds, but we're going to unite. We were united in fighting the English. We were united in fighting King George III. But now we want to get together. Again, the North was more business-oriented. What was the business at the time? So remember, we had the Constitution. There was a thought of business. What was the business that was going on? A lot of it had to do with trading. Trading meaning they would get items from other parts of the world. Could have been spices. We had the Dutch were very good sailors. The Spanish, very good sailors. The English, it's islands. So a lot of it had to do with the maritime economy. A lot of it had to do with trade. And it was business oriented. They realized not all the states could survive on just being a farming economy. A lot of it had to be based on trade. And the thought was, even though we fought England, we still want to do business with them. That's the beauty of it. That was the great leadership that we had. We beat you, but we'll do business with you. Right? Because you look at it, when I was growing up, I'm 56, I told you this many times. It was a scary time because the thought was that the world was going to be blown up. Serious. By whom? United States? Russia. We didn't get along because of political ideology. A capitalistic country, us, a communist country, Russia. And what happened in the early 1960s was that the Russian leader, Khrushchev, wanted to show some force, Russia. And what he did is, he took ships with missiles, armed with atomic warheads. And a communist country that's very close to America is Cuba. And he put these ships with warheads in Cuba, which is near Florida, and basically was showing force that you want to screw with me? I'm going to drop a bomb on you from Cuba. When we went to school, we had radioactive shelters. In other words, we would have drills. You guys have fire drills? We had nuclear attack drills, where we would go into basements of buildings where there were no windows intentionally. The only air that came in was through artificial means, and that was if a bomb hit, we were all to go into shelter and try to survive. There were people called survivalists that would go into their backyards, their homes, they would dig very, very deep tunnels and build a shelter. They'd get artificial air, they'd have dry food, clothing, gas masks, that if there was going to be a bombing, that was the way to survive. We didn't do business with Russia. The other communist country that was a big superpower, still is, China. We didn't do business with them either. Part of what happened where the world, at least a little bit, came together was through business and through trade. Do we now do business with, Jared, do we do business with Russia? Do they do business with us? Absolutely. How about China?
Yes.
Yes. We couldn't survive without China. They've lent us so much money that we probably couldn't survive. So the reality was, at the time of the American Revolution, business is business. That is what's going to operate America. Okay? So understand that. When you take business law, understand why we have these laws, because these founders were very smart and they were business people. Jefferson, despite being a slave owner, and I think it's a horrible thing, was a business leader. He had big-time farming, big time. That's why the history in America is we're never going to get rid of tobacco. We're never going to get rid of cigarettes, because it's a history going back to the 1700s of people making money off of tobacco. And then we had other leaders like Hamilton that I said that believed in banking and other business. Here's the beauty of banking from a legal perspective. You're Linda, right? And I've gone over this with you guys. If you want to buy a big item, you want to buy a house, okay? The cheapest house on Staten Island might be a townhouse. Let's say it's $250,000. Let's say when are you going to graduate college? 2 more semesters. So like a little bit more than a year, like a year. When you graduate, you're going to say, you know, when I graduate, I don't want to live with my parents anymore. You live with your folks now? You live with your parents now? Yeah, so you want to get a place to live so you can have your own space. And you know a townhouse is going to be $250,000. You have $250,000 on you? No, most people don't. So what you do is you might get 10% of $250,000. Be a math major. What's 10% of $250,000? Come on. Rati, don't go for a calculator. Come on.
25,000.
Walter, you got it? 25,000. You need a calculator for that? No, good. So 25, you got 25,000? But let's say your family said, you know what? We're graduating college, or your family gets together, we need you 25,000. That'd be great. Perfect. Now, the rest of the money to buy this condo, nice townhouse, 2 bedrooms, you need to have $225,000 more. Where are you getting that from? Bank or some other lending institution. Are they nice to you, Shelley? Are they just trying to help you out? No. They're making money. How are they making money? They're going to lend you $225,000 over 30 years. That's a typical length of a loan. So over 30 years, they're lending you $225,000. What do you think, at 5%, they're going to make after 30 years? Now you can take out your calculator, Rati, but they're going to make probably around $400,000 to $500,000. How's that? Is that good business? That's Alexander Hamilton. That's a guy who said, we're going to do this legally. Now we have laws, and one of the laws, you should write this down, is called usury laws. U-S-U-R-Y, where lending institutions are set by law as to what they can charge as a rate of interest. We also cap credit card. Because how do credit card companies make money? People say, I got plastic. I'm gonna go out to dinner tonight, we're going to the diner, it's on me. I treat. I'm paying with my credit card. If you pay your credit card every month, does the credit card company make money from you?
Yes. Well, if you pay in full, but if you don't,
You pay it in full.
then not.
They're not. What's the advantage of using a credit card if you have the ability to pay in full then, Eleonora?
You have the money to pay it back, so you don't have to pay interest, so it's convenient.
But then why don't you just pay with cash?
Well,
Credit score.
credit score.
Credit score is one. What's another reason?
Rewards. Some credit
You're
card
right.
rewards.
Yes, you're right.
And why lay out the money right away when you can just.
And then you're just carrying cash around all the time, right? So for safety reasons. But credit card companies and banks are gonna make money on the interest. That is the thought of Alexander Hamilton. That was the thought of America on the northern part of the East Coast. Remember, all these colonies were on the East Coast. More perfect union, established justice, they established the legal system, ensured domestic tranquility so that we would not have, ironically enough, civil wars, that the states would be unified with a federal government. Provide for the common defense. Remember, the thought was the English could always come back and get us. When did they in history? When did the White House get burned?
1814.
Correct. And during the War of 1812, the English came back to finish the job. Did they, Lenny? They finished the job? They took over the country?
They almost did.
But they
It
didn't.
was pretty close.
Correct. It was closer than you could imagine. That we'd all have a top of the morning to you, kind of accent today. Right? That could have happened. But we had a common defense. And the thought was that it would establish a militia and a right to bear arms. Why? So that we would not be laying down when we got attacked. And the fear wasn't the Canadians, though the Canadians were some part English, some part French, who was allied with us in the American Revolution, the French, oddly enough. Why? Go ahead, Leo.
They didn't like Britain.
They didn't, true, and also because of Khan. They needed what we had. Not everyone is altruistic. Provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, meaning the goodness of our country, secure the blessings of liberty, freedom, because the big freedom was freedom of religion, and for religion, to ourselves and our posterity. And what does posterity mean? Not only for the people that were living there then, but the thought was to protect the future. So that we, September 17, 1787, how many years ago was that the Constitution was adopted?
237 years ago?
214 is 237 years ago. And Lucas, does it still last?
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty good document. To ordain and establish the Constitution for the United States of America. Now, they stated what the rights and authority were of the national government, the federal government. But the liberties that we enjoy now were not laid out in the original Constitution. They got laid out December 15, 1791. And there we had the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Remember the dates. I'm going to test you on it. What does the Bill of Rights do? It restricts the power and authority of the federal government. And it restricts the government. We didn't want too much government. What was the concern, Sam? Why did we want to have restrictions on government?
Less power,
Because?
less power,
Because?
because they don't want to be like kings and queens.
Correct. Brilliant. Correct. We didn't want to have a monarchy anymore. We didn't want to have absolute power. We wanted to have a sharing of power. Because the thought was you could get a great leader, but you get horrible leaders. You go through history. Remember, these guys and gals studied history. They looked at the Roman Empire, the mighty Roman Empire. Does it still exist right now? No. Why not? Because you had great leaders like Julius Caesar, and then you had complete nuts like Nero and Caligula and these other people that ruled absolutely. And what did they do? Watch the movie Gladiator. Their sport was, let's have people be sacrificed. That was supposedly the civilized society. And these nuts were bored. Well, they were bored, and because they were bored, they would have people fighting each other with swords, having to fight animals for sport, for fun. So we realized this when we set up our government. We, the people, setting it up for us so that we wouldn't be persecuted because of our religion, of our race, hopefully, that eventually developed. And we also have the civil and political rights, which include the right to due process of law. Let's talk about that. The federal government and the state government have to give us due process when you have any dealings with them. The Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution has a due process clause. The 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution has a due process clause. What's due process? You have the right to have an attorney. You have the right to have your case adjudicated by either a judge or some kind of arbitrator, some kind of fair-minded, impartial person. You have the right to confront your accusers, so that if Aristotle was on trial for committing a crime, he has a right to cross-examine the person who says that they were victimized by Aristotle. We have the right to due process of law. So the Fifth Amendment applies to the federal government. The federal government must give us due process. Where does that come from? The Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. The state government has to give us due process. Where does that come from? The 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. Write it down. I will test you on it. Example, in the business realm, eminent domain. Here's what I want to do. Jerry, you live on Staten Island?
Yes,
Okay. What neighborhood?
St. George.
Okay. Great area. What I want to do with your house is I want to knock it down and I want to put a Ferris wheel there. You okay there, man?
Oh, you know,
Sick. There's like a squirrel inside the thing. And I thought I had eaten. I do. I'm easily distracted. Okay. We want to knock your house down and put a Ferris wheel. Okay. Let's say I'm a business person. I'm Ralph Corson Incorporated. Can I just go to you and say, Jared, tomorrow you're out. I'm putting a Ferris wheel. No. Well, what can you do? What can I do with you?
Maybe take me all off, right?
Exactly. It's business. I'm going to take your house and I'm going to knock it down and put up a Ferris wheel. When the government wants to do it, let's say the government wants to put, they have to put a waste management station. So St. George is getting water. We have to purify the sewage water. We're going to put it where your house is. Can the government take your private property? Is there a difference? What do you think?
I'd say no.
I'd say yes. And that's the concept of eminent domain. E-M-I-N-E-N-T. Domain is D-O-M-A-I-N. Eminent domain. And in that, it says that the government, was it in your own papers, farm your own land, that the government, this public entity, can take private property for public use as long as, here's the kicker, as long as you're duly compensated, and as long as you get due process. Because if you say, you know what, I'm 75 years old, I have cancer, bless you, I can't move yet. Could the government say, I know we want to put this waste management station, but we might have to wait, because the person who has this property is ill. Wouldn't that be fair and due process? Yes. We want to compensate you for the loss of your home, give you time to move, pay for your moving expenses, pay to get you new housing, give you fair market value. Yes. And that's what we have. Before the United States Constitution, in other countries, the government wants your property, it's like, pack up, we're taking it. Where did that happen? Look at Europe in World War II. Look at what the Nazis did. They'll take over anything you own. If you see what happened to the Jews in World War II, what happened was they took everything away from you. And by the way, wait till I get the kicker of what we did. What we did, Kaylee, in America. You probably don't know this. For the Jews, they took their property, their paintings, their artwork, their jewelry, their everything, and then killed them. Did we do the same thing? Walter, did we? Who says yeah? Mom, go ahead. That's the first. With the Native Americans, did we give them due process? No. But, he's on a roll, man. Just relax. Does he get a chance?
Not good.
Not yet? Go ahead. Go.
South America, it was, when we kept moving left.
Easy, Walter. I can make the statements. He's gonna kick your butt after class. I won't.
We had the 13 states, we just kept moving, like taking.
I think they wanted it though. But you're right, when we went west of the Mississippi and we sent, when Thomas Jefferson sent Lewis and Clark to find out what was on the other side of the Mississippi. Because Rocky, the thought was there could have been dinosaurs there. They didn't know. They knew that people would come back with fur trading, because that's what Jefferson did. Third president got Lewis and Clark with a group of people, including Native Americans, to go west of the Mississippi all the way till the end, because they thought they might have fallen off the earth. Seriously. To see what was there. But yes, when we went west and we went south, we went to war with the Native Americans and took their property. Yes. One exception is we bought some property. The Louisiana Purchase. You know who the two dealers were in this? We're talking about business leaders, Jason. We bought Louisiana and a lot of the South from another country. What country?
French.
Easy, right? Jason.
French.
Yes, the French. You didn't need his help. Now, Jefferson was the American leader. Who was the French leader that made the deal? Rocky, go ahead. It was Napoleon. It was that Napoleon. Could you imagine? Napoleon and Jefferson sit down. Let's make a deal over property. But the other time that we screwed people and took their property without due process, despite the fact that the United States Constitution said it.
Japanese people during World War II.
Japanese people during World War II, as well as some Italians. Because we were at war with Japan and Italy. Italy was on the side of the Germans. And if you were a Japanese ancestry, your property was taken away and you were put in a camp. It wasn't a death camp like Hitler did to the Jews, but it was a camp where your property was taken away. Could you imagine that? That happened to Japanese. And some Italians. Some Italians had to go live in a camp. Go ahead.
What's the thing with Panama? Don't we
You're just throwing crap against the wall, bro.
No, I wanna know because,
Tell me about Panama.
no, I want you, I don't know.
I don't know either. Just give me a little idea. Tell me about Panama. Panama could be a hooker for all I know.
Basically own Panama.
What's that?
Basically own it.
You own Panama?
You know,
How so?
we're in control.
How so? We don't control the government. We have a friendly leader. I got news for Muhammad. We do that with a lot of countries. Right? Go watch the movie or read the book The Godfather about how until the Cuban Revolution where Castro took over, we, meaning Americans, particularly the Italian mafia, went into Cuba and they were using it as kind of a pleasure palace. It was becoming a place where they were gambling and prostitution, and they had a friendly government, and the thought was that that would be, if you wanted vice, you wanted to go gamble, you wanted prostitutes, you wanted drugs, you wanted liquor, go to Cuba, and that became like the Disney World for adults. But then what happened is Castro and his people said, well, you're not taking our country, and they were just a band of rebels, lightly armed, beat down everybody, including the American government. Pretty significant. Of course, they were armed by the Russians, but that's another story. All right, we continue. So now, what are our rights that are from the, and what are our freedoms from the Bill of Rights? Freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, and freedom to petition. In other words, bring a case to court. Assembly, where that comes from is you guys are students. Any of you guys gonna go to Zuccotti Park, you know where that is? Where is it, Rati?
So, right by Wall Street?
It is, and it's a park, it's by Wall Street, it's also by where the World Trade Center was, and people who feel that they are not represented sufficiently, that they don't have a voice in government, they go there and they camped out. The reason they're able to do that is the Bill of Rights, gives the right to assembly.
Actually, they got kicked out.
They did eventually, because then it became a trespass issue, because the guy who owns Zuccotti Park said, "Yeah, go right ahead." And then it started to spill over into other streets, and Bloomberg eventually said, all right, we'll bring in the police department, and we'll take them out for trespassing, and they're blocking streets, and they found laws that they were violating. Yes. But you have a right to assemble. Particularly it becomes important for you guys as college students. Okay, several basic concepts of constitutional law. The fundamental principles are, number one, there's limitations on government. We have federalism. The governing power is divided between the federal government and the states. So going back to the colonies, the federal government created the unity, but we had also the state governments having their own individual power. The federal government has restrictions on its power, it's not unlimited. Whatever powers that the federal government has and whatever is left over, in other words, what the federal government is not given, the state government could enact laws. We also have the Federal Supremacy Clause. Federal law takes precedence over conflicting state laws. So if there's a federal law that says that vaping is illegal, state law can't say that, okay, you can vape. So that if we have the Volstead Act, which I forget what amendment it was to the Constitution, which prohibited the sale and distribution of alcohol, that if the federal government has that law, the state governments can't say, okay, we can't have alcohol, but in New York we can. Can't do that. Why? Because of, oh crap. Anybody have a little Purell on them? Is this some sticky shit? Anybody have a little Purell? One of the women in this class got a little Purell in their bag. Thank you. Zarka, Francesca, good, thank you. Federal law takes precedent over conflicting state laws is the Supremacy Clause. We also have federal preemption. It's the first right of the federal government to regulate matters within its powers. So the federal government could regulate. They could regulate maybe the speed limit, interstate transportation. Thanks, Francesca. It's scented?
Yeah, so.
Nice scent? Like a nice manly scent?
No, it's not really.
At least we can mark it up with that.
Sorry.
You can't use it.
I don't wanna use it.
Oh, I smell fantastic. Thanks for this. Now I'm clean and I smell good. Then we also have the separate. We have judicial review, which comes from Marbury versus Madison, where the judicial branch of government determines whether the laws, the black letter laws passed by the executive branch of government, legislative branch of government are constitutional. That is the concept of judicial review. And we have separation of powers. We have the legislative branch, executive branch, judicial branch. What are their purposes? Legislative and executive create laws, basic black letter law. The president has the right to make treaties. He can deal at an international level with other countries. Legislative branch, the federal level, it's the Senate and the Congress. At the state, it's the Senate and the Assembly. City, it's the council. Then you have the judicial branch determining if those laws passed by the federal government, meaning the legislative branch and the executive branch, are they constitutional? That's why when you had the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, the courts determined whether or not that law was constitutional. And it was determined to be, Nicole? Constitutional or unconstitutional?
What, Obama laws?
Yeah, the Affordable Care Act.
No, I think it got messed up, right? All of Obama.
Jason, is it a law right now?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
the Obamacare? Yeah, but it's no good.
Affordable Care Act, it doesn't
Oh.
say on the law
But
Obamacare.
it doesn't work though, yeah.
How do you know?
Because there's a lot of controversy about it.
There's controversy, but no one knows the controversy is. People just say, oh, there's controversy. But let me explain to you.
Mm.
And I'm a Republican. Affordable Care Act is a very good idea. Do you know that one of the problems you're gonna have when you become older is getting health insurance? You're gonna take a crap job just so you can have insurance. Tell me. I went from the time I left college to the time I got a job as assistant district attorney without any health care. God forbid if I ever got sick. I got sick, I dealt with it. Just dealt with it. Because I didn't have health insurance. I didn't go to dentist, I didn't go to an eye doctor, nothing. Why? I didn't have the money. Now, you can get it, which is a very good thing. It's a very good thing what Obama did. Now, how it's implemented, does it work? People complain, the right wing, oh, it doesn't work because I go on the computer and I can't get on. Hey, everything when you first start out is a problem. Is anyone reporting problems anymore about it? Can you get health insurance now in America?
But no one accepts it though, like Obamacare, no one accepts it.
Some do. You just gotta go to the doctors that do.
Most don't, like you'll have to travel, like if you live in Staten Island, you'd have to travel probably to like Queens to find a doctor that accepts it.
But then that's what you gotta do though.
I know, but it's a little bit, it's ridiculous.
No, but eventually it's gonna get better. Believe me.
I don't think
Yes.
so.
I don't agree with that. I mean,
Alright, I'm just giving you my opinion. You could be right too. I'm not saying I'm 100%
Yeah,
right. You have an opinion, I have an opinion.
I try to get it, and still I would have to pay more than I actually earn to get it, to have
Yeah,
insurance.
he's
Okay,
right.
that's a problem.
And they actually are forcing you to have it, otherwise you're gonna have to pay penalty and the tax return. This is crazy,
That's a
Yeah.
bad thing.
yeah.
That's a bad
You
thing.
can't force someone to have it.
But you know what though, the objective where everyone has health care, affordable health care, that's important. Because you wanna have health care.
Yeah, but then they'll make it affordable.
It's not
They'll make it like
Yeah.
500 a month and I make
You know what,
800.
I'm voting for you, because you're right, it should be affordable, but the concept is a good one, they just gotta fix it. And it takes time to fix it. Okay. So we have basic principles of federalism, federal supremacy, preemption, judicial review is Marbury versus Madison, the power of the courts to determine constitutionality of any legislative or executive act. We have separation of powers between the legislative, executive, and judicial branch of government. What are the powers of government? One is commerce power. Where does that come from? The Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution. The United States Constitution provides that Congress has the power to regulate commerce with other nations and among the states. Basically, it says that the federal government can regulate the economy. Why? Because most commerce, most business is interstate business. Angela, I'll give you an example. I go into business with you, okay? What kind of business are we gonna have together? Good, we'll have a restaurant, right? What kind of food are we gonna have? Say Italian?
Italian.
You're very creative.
Spanish.
You're really creative.
French.
French.
Okay, that's nice. We're gonna have French food. Are we gonna deliver?
No.
Yeah, we wanna
Well-
deliver. Yeah. We gotta give college graduates a job, they gotta deliver food.
Okay.
I'm being a wise guy, I'm sorry. So here's what we do, we hire all the unemployed college students, these, meaning the management agents. We're gonna give them, you got the joke, Mustafa, thanks. We're gonna deliver food to, some towns in New Jersey, on the other side of the Outerbridge Crossing. Are we involved in interstate commerce in doing that?
Yes.
How come?
It's a different state.
Correct. Correct. And now you can see with the internet and the way goods can be shipped and distributed, that most business is interstate commerce. Even our little French restaurant is involved in interstate commerce. Once we have that, Ronald, can the federal government regulate us, our little restaurant? What's the name of it, by the way? Would you name a French restaurant Ralph's?
No.
Pizzeria Ralph's? You can have a Pizzeria Ralph's, absolutely. You can have Jason's Pizzeria, you wanna go to a pizzeria named Jason's? Better be funky, it's gonna be Jason's. Not gonna work, right? So a French place gotta have a French name. Pierre's. Marie's. No?
Very level.
What's that?
Very.
But anyway, we're involved in interstate commerce and the government could regulate us, the federal government could regulate us, because where does that come from? Again, the United States Constitution, the Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution. The United States Supreme Court has interpreted the Commerce Clause as granting virtually complete power of Congress to regulate the economy and business. Okay? How does the government regulate the economy and business? One, creation of the Federal Reserve. We have the government setting the interest rate on what can be charged by banks. Okay? So we have really nearly a complete regulation. Congress has the power to regulate the channels of interstate commerce, the instrumentalities of interstate commerce, and those activities having a substantial relation to interstate commerce. Whatever the federal government doesn't regulate, the state government can then regulate. Okay, so if the federal government leaves it alone, as long as the state laws don't conflict with federal law, then the states can regulate whatever is remaining. What are the other powers? Federal fiscal powers involve taxation. We look at what it costs to go over the Verrazano Bridge. How much is it? $15.
Too much.
The guy that I work for, I'm an attorney for Senator Lanza, state senator, he's gotten it, if you're a Staten Island resident, what do you pay? $5.40. What's that?
$8 on the Easy Pass.
You're a New York, you're a Staten Island resident, it's $5.40. Jared, $6?
No, it's almost six, it's like $5.
It's $5.40, yeah, that's what it is. But where does that come from? That comes from powers of government to tax. That's essentially a tax. Spending, how our money is spent. When I'm working for the Senate and we see all these communities devastated, I had to be down in Oakwood Beach yesterday to see the devastation. It's still around. 2 years later, it's almost 2 years since the storm Sandy. There's still homes boarded up, being knocked down. And the government is going to give, eventually, people the money that have been displaced by what happened. But these disasters happen all over the country. Go ahead.
So going a little back to what we were talking about before, those houses on Oakwood Beach that they're doing buyouts. So most of the houses got bought out, but some people refuse to move.
That's
So
true.
now what's gonna happen with those people?
They have a right to stay. Because of due process, they have a right to stay. Their thought is, I'm living by the water, it happens every 100 years. So if people wanna leave, they could take a buyout, I'm gonna stay. Now they're gonna be staying amongst a lot of vacant property. But that's gonna look a hell of a lot better than boarded up houses that have been destroyed by a storm. But they have a right to stay, that's a due process right. The government, if the government said that we wanna put something else there, we wanna make it a blue belt for safety purposes, the government can do that through eminent domain. Okay? Go ahead, Ramti.
I know most of the people in Staten Island buy the house but don't buy the land. So if you would buy
What do you mean? You buy a house and you buy the land.
I mean, you buy the house but you don't buy the land.
Yes, you do.
Oh, you do?
You do.
So why can't you
Who owns the
dig up a
land? In
hole?
my house, who owns the land?
So why can't you dig up a hole or cut down the tree if it's your land?
Because there's laws that say that for every tree you knock down, you gotta replace it. Because otherwise, I mean, I'm Italian, what I would do is I'd concrete everything. I knock down all the trees in my backyard, make it just concrete. You're supposed to laugh at that, Ramti, but obviously you didn't get to the tank.
I can't giggle.
Okay. But if you're not, the law say if you, like we have a law called hillside preservation. If you live on a hill and you knock down, you're not allowed to knock down trees. And if you do, you gotta replace it with 3. Yeah, so. We have the ability to borrow and coin money, and we have eminent domain. The power of the government, this is the example I gave you with Gyra and the Ferris wheel, which is gonna happen, by the way, in St. George. The power of a government to take private property for public use upon payment of fair compensation. What are the limitations of government? No state shall pass any law impairing the obligation of contracts. Business involves contracts. So we know now the government can't impair there being legal contracts. Now, not all contracts are valid, not all contracts are legal, but the ones that are valid and legal and enforceable, the government can't prevent it. You're allowed to contract, as long as you do it legally and validly. We have the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. We also have free speech, where free speech is not unlimited. Some forms of speech, such as obscenity, don't receive any protection. Another example would be, they give you the example in law school, you walk into a crowded movie theater and you go out and you say that your name is Ali, right? What's the word you don't want to hear in a crowded movie theater? Fire! Can't say that. Why? It's not protected speech. Unless what, Leo? Unless it's really a fire. Exactly. How about speech relating to business? Well, how many of you, give me a show of hands, marketeers, marketing majors? I wish I was a marketing major. You're Anthony, right? Nobody majors in marketing anymore. I was a finance major. I kind of wish I was a marketing major, then I might be doing something different in my life. But what if you have a product? What's your favorite type of soda? What do you like? Oh, fancy. So what's your favorite brand? White Rock? Schweppes? I don't know, whatever you like. But let's say you're now marketing genius for Schweppes, and you say that the best seltzer on earth is Schweppes. You allowed to say that? Because now we have corporate speech. And the answer is you're allowed to puff. You know that word puff in advertising and marketing? You could exaggerate. But you have to be truthful. So if you're going to say that we've had a blind taste test of 5 million people, and they preferred Schweppes to White Rock and Key Food and all these other seltzers, but you lied about it, you don't have protected speech. Okay? So you have, business has to deal with this concept of free speech as well. What else do we have? You don't have a right to defame someone. That's part of a limitation on free speech. You can't defame someone. But if you're going to say something that's truthful, you can do that. Like I was written about in the College of Staten Island newspaper years back when I was a judge. This student of mine wanted to do a paper about me. And I said, where's it going to be? It's going to be in the banner. Oh, can't wait. Sounds great. So she interviews me and she does a story. In the story, she said she talked to me in my chambers as a judge, and I was sitting there petting a cat, and I was talking about the way the school should be run. And I'm like, what kind of crap is this? So I called her in, I said, you wrote this story. It's a story. She goes, well, professor, I'm sorry, I mean judge. It was a creative writing class. I was like, creative writing, but you lied? Well, it's creative writing. I was allowed to be creative. But people can actually think I'm sitting in my chamber planning how the College of Staten Island should be run. It's bullshit. It never happened. Well, it's the way it is. So you know what I figured I'd just leave it alone. And I did. I didn't say, you got to print a retraction. I guess people thought it was a bit of a joke. But I kind of sounded like I was Austin Powers. Yes.
So, this is gonna sound stupid, but.
Then don't say it.
Okay, now.
Good. Thank you. All right. We have, again, due process. The 5th and 14th Amendments prohibit the federal and state governments, respectively, 5th Amendment, federal government, 14th Amendment, state government, from depriving any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And there's two aspects. Substantive, you can have actual statutes, actual laws, and procedural. Remember I told you about substantive law creates legal rights and duties, and procedural law shows the process of how you support substantive law. So we have that, substantive due process and procedural due process. We also have equal protection. Requirements that similarly situated persons be treated similarly by governmental action. You cannot discriminate. The law has to apply to everyone the same way. So if you say, hey, I'm Muslim, and the laws are not geared to me, they're geared to Christians and Jews, you're not getting equal protection. If you're gay, and you're getting treated differently than people that are hetero, that's where the right to challenge this comes from equal protection. We're supposed to be treated equally. Now remember, that's there as an amendment to the United States Constitution. It's around in 1791. But what about the black people at the time of the Civil War? Was there due process? Was there equal protection? No. So was there due process and equal protection, Mustafa, with the Native Americans?
No.
No! But, we have to just more than talk a good game, we have to do what was created for us with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So understand what your obligation is as you get older and you start working, as you realize that we have to be fair to everybody. Requirement that similarly situated persons be treated similarly by government action. And there has to be a strict scrutiny of any of these laws to make sure that no one's rights are not protected. So what do we have? We have with the United States Constitution, we have the Bill of Rights was not included in the original United States Constitution. We have the concept that a law is only valid unless it complies with the United States Constitution. We have the concept that the federal government's authority to govern economic matters flows from the Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution. We have the concept of judicial review, the process by which the courts review governmental action to determine whether such actions conform with the United States Constitution. The United States Constitution was created September 17th, 1787. The Bill of Rights was adopted in 1791, December of 1791, almost a little more than 4 years later. Both the 5th and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution contain due process clauses. 5th deals with the federal government, 14th, the state government. And we know the Bill of Rights was not part of the original Constitution. The original Constitution was adopted on September 17th, 1787. We have the term of the eminent domain, refers to the governmental taking of private property. If the government does that, there's a requirement of due process. And we also know that the United States Supreme Court is the final authority as to the constitutionality of any federal and state law. Now, when you have trials, remember there's trials and there's appeals. When you have a trial, there's two kinds of trials. One is a bench trial, done by just the judge, and there the judge decides both issues of fact and issues of law. Issues of fact are whether someone's guilty or not guilty in a criminal case, in a civil case whether they're responsible or not responsible, whether the light was red or green, whether someone was using self-defense or not. These are issues of fact. Issues of law are always decided by a judge, whether it's a bench trial, just done by a judge, or a jury trial with the jury. Issues of law are whether or not items of evidence are admissible or not. So the ultimate decision is an issue of fact. Guilt, not guilt, liability, non-liability, responsibility, not responsibility. Okay? Issues of law, again, are admissibility of evidence. Judges, when they hear cases, are supposed to let the facts develop and stay out of the way. Let the attorneys work. If it's a jury trial, let the jury decide. If it's a bench trial, the judge decides and pays attention. The judge is there to make sure that issues of law, whether to sustain an objection, overrule an objection, whether to admit evidence or not, that's what their role is. That's a trial level. The appellate level, remember there's two appeals. The first, bless you, is an intermediate appeal. That's mandatory, you're allowed. And then you have the final appeal, which is discretionary. The highest court in the United States federal system is the United States Supreme Court. The New York State Court, it's the New York State Court of Appeals. They're appellate courts. What do appellate courts do? They don't do a new trial. They consider the legal briefs and memorandums of law. They look at the record, transcript of what occurred, and they decide whether to affirm, reverse, remand, or modify. So understand there's trials and there's appeals. Where does that come into with constitutional law? Constitutional law, remember we have the judiciary determines constitutionality. Determine whether or not these laws passed by the executive branch of government and legislative branch of government are constitutional. That's when the judges decide these cases, that's where case law, the common law, judge-made law, will mean the same thing, comes into play. Those statutes enacted by the executive branch of government, legislative branch of government, that's black letter law. That's statutory law, okay? Those are the two primary sources of law. Now, we have administrative law, chapter 5. Administrative agencies are governmental entities. Other than courts and legislatures, administrative agencies have the authority to affect the rights of private parties through their operations. Administrative agencies, they have commissions, boards, departments, administrations, bureaus. Example, on the federal, state, and local levels, we have in our country countless administrative agencies. It's considered to be the fourth branch of government, but in actuality, it's typically part of the executive branch of government. I went over this already with you, it bears repeating. When you have a new president, when you have a new governor, when you have a new mayor, they will appoint people to run their agencies. And the federal level will be the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. As relating to business, it'll be the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. New president, new leader of that governmental agency. Governor, when Cuomo became governor, he's got state agencies to run. Department of Motor Vehicles, for example. The state liquor authority, for example. When the mayor comes into power, what are the agencies that you have there? You have, for example, the police department. You put a new police commissioner in. You have a new civilian complaint review board. You put in a new commissioner, a new fire commissioner, a new sanitation commissioner. We now have the regulation of restaurants with the health ratings. That's done through an administrative agency, done by the mayor. Because remember, though it's considered in quotations to be the fourth branch of government, it's really part of the executive branch. What are their powers? What are their operations? They can make rules. Agency statement of general or particular applicability, designed to implement, interpret, or process law or policy. So we have is the State Liquor Authority can have rules on how many bottles of liquor someone can buy. What the process is if a owner of a liquor store sells to a minor. So we have rulemaking is something that the administrative agencies could do. We have enforcement, process by which agencies determine whether their rules have been violated. So if you get a speeding ticket, you go to the Department of Motor Vehicles, what could happen? Your license could be suspended. You have an administrative process that you have to deal with. They adjudicate cases. They have an investigation, and they can resolve the case. That's called an adjudication, resolving a matter. They can issue orders. What are the limitations on administrative agencies? Judges can review their work. There's a thing called an exhaustion of administrative remedies. So if you have a speeding ticket, and Lenny challenges it, he goes to the Department of Motor Vehicles, and he does a hearing in front of that nutjob judge, that fake judge, who finds everybody guilty. Yeah, I hate him too.
Me too.
Because he's not fair. Yes, he is. Yes, he is, Ronald, he is. He's a Richard. He sure is.
So what can we do about that? How can we change the job?
Well, they tried to get rid of him. And what it takes is you need the person who runs the Department of Motor Vehicles to get rid of him. But they won't, because he finds everybody guilty, and that raises money for the state. So he's loved at the state level, though he's not fair to people. He's nasty, he's rude. However, here's the however. There is procedural law that when you go before an administrative agency like this motor vehicle guy, that you have to exhaust all of your administrative remedies. If the procedure says that you have a hearing in front of this guy and then you can file an appeal in front of more traffic court judges, and then at the conclusion they reach a decision, you can then, if that concludes, if that exhausts your administrative remedies, you then have a right to take the case to a real judge in a real court, the New York State Supreme Court, to challenge whether what he did was right or wrong. Now,
Whole decision-making process, or just?
his decision-making process. So why do most people don't do that? Number one, 1 second, Charlie, I'm gonna ask you the second. Number one is they don't know they can do it. And number two, it costs a lot of money. So you say, you know what, he clipped me for a $200 ticket, now I'm gonna pay $5,000 to a lawyer to do this, are you gonna do that? No, but when would you? When it affects whether your license is suspended or not, you need that license to get to work, you need it bad, then you'll spend the money. But most people have the money to do that, they'd rather hire a driver to take them around for the 2 months of the suspension than file the appeal, and that's why this guy stays around. Okay, now, understand, now you've been there, Roxy, right? And Ronald has been there too. Is there a jury trial in an administrative hearing? No. Understand this, understand, when you have administrative trials, there are no juries. It's just done by a judge. And that's where you get a little bit of unfairness. Roxy, you think you'd have a better chance, Ronald, a better chance if there was a jury there?
Yeah.
What's that?
Hell yeah.
Absolutely. Because people would understand that, you know what, maybe I didn't come to a full stop, but it was 3 o'clock in the morning, I did a half of a stop, and I just wanted to get through and I wanted to get home. I looked both ways, come on, right? But that's not what happens. You know what, I was on the highway, I'm keeping up with traffic, okay, I went 69 miles an hour instead of 60. Is that such a big deal? What do you think a jury would say to that? Dismissed, or you know what, I'm gonna fine Ronald for going 9 miles over the speed limit?
I would say dismissed if I was the jury.
Absolutely. That's why they can't trust us. Go ahead.
They caught me once because I was going 47 on a 45 speed limit.
You deserved it.
But it's 2 miles per hour and I gotta pay the ticket.
I know, and you know what, you said, I'd rather just pay the ticket and mail it in, and that's what they go with. You know how many red lights I get with the automatic cameras and the speeders on the highway with the automatic?
Yeah,
Do
once
you think I challenge them?
you could.
This is
I could, but I don't. Gyra.
Petty stuff.
I actually went to court because they said they stopped me saying I was on my cell phone, which I wasn't. So I brought my my phone log to the court, and he still made me pay $10.
You're kidding.
No.
Was it that nasty guy?
Yes. I said, unbelievable. I got proof here that I
I'm gonna
was
tell you
on
a
my
weird
phone.
story about the administrative judges. I started my law practice in 1991, so I was still a young guy. And the neighborhood I grew up in was Richmond Town. And a lot of guys I grew up with were like some tough guys, they were in and out of trouble, in and out of going to jail. They would hire me to do all their work, whether it was criminal work or doing their real estate closings or their wills. I did all the work for these guys. Except, I got other people to hire me to go to traffic court. This is when I started out my business. I don't do traffic court anymore. But then, you know, I do whatever it takes to make money, you know? They weren't hired. So my friends were hanging out, we're having a beer. He goes, "Hey, Ralph, last week I was in traffic court and I got my case dismissed." I said, "You went without me?" "Yeah." I said, "What's the problem?" "Well, you're an honest guy." So what was that? Well, there's the 2 judges, and one of them taught here. This is going back again, early 90s. These 2 guys, what you do is, this one motor vehicle was where, I say Pergamon Plaza, but it's not even there now. It's that shopping mall that's near Sears, by the Staten Island Mall. That's where motor vehicles used to be. And the 2 judges would meet the attorneys and the litigants in a gas station on Richmond Avenue, and you pay them off before the yeah, you give the guy like $100, $150 cash, you go in, dismiss the case. Wow. And they said, "We knew you wouldn't do that," but that's where we all go to the gas station and we meet the judge, and these 2 guys, one denied it, he ended up quitting and they didn't get him, he gave up the other guy. The other guy went to jail, federal jail. I swear to God. So maybe there'll be justice with this other clown. Maybe the 1% that he's dismissing, somehow he's... We'll see.
We gotta stalk him.
So again, what we have is we have a control of administrative agencies by the legislature. Through the budget power, they can say, you know what, there's not enough money for motor vehicle, get rid of it. The executive branch of government has the power to appoint and remove the chief administrators. We have a disclosure of information. We know what this guy's record is because we have the Freedom of Information Act. It lays out, for us, we can determine statistics, how many guilty, how many not guilty, because of the Freedom of Information Act. So, we have Administrative hearings are held before a judge and not a jury. It is not like a court hearing, okay? Administrative hearings are held before a judge and not a jury, so it's not like a typical court hearing. We also want you to know that, why do we have a constitution? One of the reasons we have a constitution is to restrict the powers of government. We can't have the government going wild. Again, the United States Constitution provides that federal laws are the supreme law of the land. Now, I'm gonna go over with you guys a little bit about how court proceedings go, and then we're gonna start talking about criminal and civil law and their similarities and their differences. What happens with a lawsuit is this. What you're gonna deal with in business law, it's gonna be mostly civil law, in other words, non-criminal law. And a civil lawsuit starts with the filing of a summons and a complaint. A summons is a single sheet of paper that tells the person being sued that number one, they're being sued. And two, if they don't respond to the lawsuit, they could be defaulted. In other words, they would lose the lawsuit without them ever appearing in court. It tells them they have to answer the lawsuit, they have to respond to it. So whenever someone serves you with a complaint, not a complaint, I'm really mad at you, Jason, but it's gotta be a complaint, they're suing you, you have to answer that complaint. And when you put in an answer, you essentially either deny the allegations against you, or you admit the allegations against you, or you say, I don't know if it's admitting or denying, I don't know what you're even asking for. Those are your choices. So you have a complaint and you have an answer. The person who wants to proceed with the case, that's the plaintiff typically, will get the case before a judge. It doesn't automatically go before a judge. One of the parties to the lawsuit has to file something called a request for judicial intervention. In other words, clerk's office, please assign a judge to my case so that judge could adjudicate my case. That's a request for judicial intervention. You then have a case going before a judge. And what judges do, whether it's civil law or criminal law, they conference the cases with the attorneys. In criminal law, you're going to have a prosecutor and you have a defense attorney. In civil law, you're going to have an attorney for the plaintiff and an attorney for the defendant. And the judge, who hopefully is experienced, will sit down with the attorneys and try to negotiate a settlement. Why negotiate a settlement? Well, in criminal law, there's risks. If you take a case to trial and you lose, you might have to go to jail. If you plea bargain your case, you maybe get a much better deal, because you don't have to put the prosecution through the rigors of doing a trial. So you use that to try to get your client a better deal. In civil law, the reason that you try to negotiate is the example I gave you last class, where you never know what a jury is going to do. Juries are very unpredictable, right? In criminal law and civil law, you never know how they're really going to go. They might not like your client because he or she wears red shoes. I'll give you an example. When I was a prosecutor, I handled this rape case where the complaining witness was a beautiful young lady who's about my age now, we're in our early 20s. Red hair, she came into court on the day of the trial where she was going to testify that she was raped. With her hair down, red miniskirt, red high heel shoes. So I said, what are you wearing? She goes, well, I look good in this, I have red hair. I said, I know, it's not a matter of looking good, I want to make sure that no one prejudices you. Because I realized people would, unfairly or fairly. I had to be smart. So I had a woman detective take her home, go to her house. I told the judge I had a stomach ache and I needed a delay of a couple hours until my Pepto-Bismol stuck in. And she came back, her hair pulled back, black dress, Peter Pan collar, below the knee, flat shoes, and we convicted the guy. And he should have been convicted. Because you don't want someone to look at your case and say that they didn't like your witness because of who they were or what they wore. And afterwards I told her, I said, look, here's the thing. I said, don't take this as an offense, it's a joke. The only people that wear red shoes are hookers and children. So I don't want you to be thought of as either way. But we convicted a guy who did a very bad crime, and we found out that he had been raping other women throughout the country. So we're very glad to convict this guy for what he did. But there's a strategy involved. Again, the jury could have said not guilty because she wore red shoes and she was pretty. Okay, so you don't want to have that happen. So you try to negotiate settlements, and judges they do pretrial conferences, they do preliminary conferences, they do status conferences, they do compliance conferences, and every one of these conferences is done with an effort to settle the case. If the case doesn't settle, then the case would go to trial. With a criminal case, the prosecution, the government, has to prove guilt by proof beyond a reasonable doubt, which means that if there's no reason to doubt that defendant's guilt, the jury in a jury trial, a judge in a bench trial, must vote guilty. There's no reason to doubt. If there is a reason to doubt, and that reason is based on evidence or lack of evidence, then the jury in a jury trial, a judge in a bench trial, must vote not guilty. And it can't be based upon whether it was someone who was black or white or Asian, or whether they were Christian, Jew, or Muslim, or Scientologist, whether they wore red shoes or black shoes. It has to be based on evidence or lack of evidence. If you're dissatisfied with a decision in a trial court, you have a right to file an appeal. The first appeal you have is mandatory. You're allowed to file it. Your second is discretionary. The only thing you can't appeal is what, Salvatore? Bless you. Go, Walter.
I think you can't appeal non-guilty verdicts.
Correct. When someone is found not guilty, the prosecution can't file an appeal. Why? Eleanor, do you know why? He said it. Double jeopardy. Okay? So we have that as well. So you have this process where you have trial, and you have appeal, and then you have your rights. What are our rights? You have a right to an attorney. If you can't afford an attorney, one could be appointed to represent you free of charge if you qualify. With criminal cases, you are innocent until proven guilty. You're presumed innocent. You have a right to remain silent. Your silence can't be held against you. You have a right to confront your accusers. In other words, those that are accusing you of a crime have to testify against you, and you get a right to cross-examine them. So you have all these wonderful rights. A crime is an act or omission in violation of a public law and punishable by the government. Again, when you commit a crime against one of us, you've committed a crime against all of us. There could be omissions of things you could be convicted of a crime for. The penultimate, the next to last episode of Seinfeld, they get hired by NBC, the Seinfeld group, to do a TV show. And TV people said, we're going to send you in our private plane anywhere you want in the world. I think they decided they want to go to Paris, but the plane broke down. They ended up landing the plane in Massachusetts, where they happened to have a law, a Good Samaritan law, that if you see someone who's being a crime victim, you have to, as a citizen, try to intervene. And what happened was a guy was getting mugged, and they had a camera, and Kramer is filming it, and this guy gets mugged, and all they were doing was making comments, that guy's chubby, well, he's not gonna have any money to buy food, things like that. And what happens is they get arrested for failing to act on behalf of the guy that was the victim. Because you could have laws that if you fail to do something, you could be convicted of a crime. It could be at a level where you own a restaurant and you fail to have a fire extinguisher, that you could go and be prosecuted for that. So we know that with crimes, it can be an act, you've done something, or failing to do something, where you have a punishment by the government. So a crime is any act or omission forbidden by public law in the interest of protecting society, and made punishable by the government in a judicial proceeding. Now we have the elements of a crime. And we're going to do this, the last thing we do for today. So we're really, I got to so much thank your class, because the first few classes we went 2 hours, we banged out a lot of stuff. We are right on schedule. I try to be on, look, I'm not a freak on that, I gotta be on schedule, when you're on time here, but it runs better when everybody comes on time and we follow a plan, so we can do this. But we're doing administrative law today and we finished it. So now we're gonna go into criminal law, which is the next chapter. There's two elements of a crime. There's actus reus. Now we have this fancy Latin. Where does it come from? Because remember we talked about the influence of the Roman Empire on our founders when they were creating laws. Actus reus, and we have mens rea. These are acts and or well, let's just go with it. We're gonna go with acts right now. You've done something. Mens rea is intent or your act was reckless or depraved. Let's go over this now for a moment. All right. Mens rea means intent, the mental elements. We have two elements of a crime, the action and the mental element. If I commit a crime and I kick Angela in the head, how can you tell what I was thinking? You can tell by what I did and what I said. I'm gonna kick your ass and I kick you in the head. Can you tell that my intent was to hurt you by my action and what I said?
Yes.
Yes. Now, can you always tell what someone is thinking? No. Well, let's think about it. I come over to you and I say, hey baby, how you doing? About my age, I'm a little younger, so why don't we go out for a drink after class? What am I thinking? Right? So you can tell what someone is thinking by what they say and what they do. You can't prove, right, what they say and their actions. You can't read someone's mind. So when you have to prove intent, it's not mind reading. You could figure out what they did, what they meant to do, by what they said and what they did. Okay? That's intent. Now, you have this intent element of crimes, but I'll give you another example. Sometimes people don't intend to do things, but they commit a crime nonetheless. So here's what happens with me and Jairo. Jairo is walking out of campus. And Lenny, she seems like a nice student, right? She give me a hard time and all, no problem. So what I do is I'm driving fast and there's a hot-looking professor walking down the street, and I'm going about 65 miles an hour, and I hop the curb and I run over Jairo. Have I committed a crime? No, I ran your ass over. Oh, am I allowed to do that?
No.
Well, don't mess with me, because then I will accidentally run you over. Now, did I, Angela, intend to run her over?
No.
No. Did I say I'm going to run her over? Did I point the car at her and say I'm going to run her over and I'm aiming for her, Angela?
No.
No. However, do we agree, Jaira, that what I did was reckless?
Yes.
That can give you the mental element of a crime. Example, this happened. I get out of the military, I'm in Afghanistan. I come home, I go in my backyard, and I get an AK-47, boom, 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 and I shoot it in the air. Bullet comes down, you're Benjamin, right? Benjamin's walking a block away, and a bullet comes down, and whoop, hits him right in the head and kills him. Benjamin, did I intend to kill you?
No.
Did I act with recklessness or depravity?
No.
Yes. Depravity means that you have a reckless disregard for human life. So here's what I did. Zerka, here's what I did. Did you know, Zerka, that I am a marksman with a bow and arrow? Did you know that? Would you like me to prove it? Okay. Anybody have an apple? This is a morning class. I'm going to put an apple on Zerka's head. And I'm going to come here, and I'm going to first start out easy, and I'm going to shoot, and I'm going to, hit the board, and I'll hit the thermometer or the thermostat over there. And now the bigger challenge is I'm going to shoot the apple off of Zerka's head with my bow and arrow. So what I do is I line up, I got people in the way, I got a franchise, hey, move out of the way a little bit, thank you, and your name, next? Karen, Iskender, out of the way, she's not hitting on you, I got a big Ali, okay. And I shoot, and I make a really good shot, I'm damn close, but I get it right over here. Just missed by a little bit, and unfortunately, I kill Zerka. But, Zerka, did I intend to kill you? Did I act with recklessness and or depravity? It's an and or depravity? Yes. And that could take the place of intent. Okay? Actus reus is the act, or the failure to act. That also has to be an element of the crime. I have to do something. I can't say, you know what, I wish that Leo was dead. And he walks out of here today, and a lightning bolt hits him. Did I do it? But I thought of it. It's not enough. There's got to be an act. It can't just be a thought. I wish that Kaylee will get mugged later today. Did I do it? No. Now, besides intent, there could be something called a transferred intent. As you know, Ali, I am a martial arts expert, so I give a wheeling kick to try to knock the hat off your head, and I miss, and I get Linda, and I break her nose. Now, did I intend Linda to kick you in the head? No. So, am I guilty of assaulting you? And the answer is yes, through this fiction called transferred intent. The intent that I was giving to Ali can be transferred to Linda by my act. That can be transferred intent. Okay? So you need these two elements. Actus reus, mens rea. You need proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and you can find and prove someone's guilty. If you can show that there's no reason to doubt someone's guilt, they must be found guilty. If there is a reason to doubt guilt, then it must be not guilty. Now, let me complete the attendance. Amir, don't go anywhere, we're not done. Amir. No. Ali.
Yeah.
Yes. Maxim. You're like Whaley. You're in the Whaley category. Victoria, no. Kanat Malik, no. Mohammed Mukhtar, no. Linda, yes. Jacqueline Kajo, no. Okay. Now, the burden of proof in a criminal case is different than in a civil case. Criminal case is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. In most civil cases, it's a preponderance of the evidence standard. So they're different standards. A prosecutor does not have to prove guilt by proof beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's not beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. Under the United States legal system, guilt is never presumed. You are presumed innocent. You have the right to remain silent, which means that a defendant does not have to testify in a criminal proceeding. You have two kinds of trials. A bench trial is one where the decision is made by a judge only without a jury. You have bench trials and you have jury trials. In a criminal case, the defendant has the right to demand a jury trial. You have two elements of crimes. You have actus reus, which is the non-mental elements of a crime. And then you have mens rea, which are the mental elements of a crime. And again, the state, the government cannot appeal a verdict of not guilty if there is an error in a trial because of double jeopardy. Okay, what are we going to do next class? We're going to complete criminal law. If you look at your syllabus, look at that now, a moment to do that. Looking at our syllabus, our next class is September 27th. We're going to do criminal law, and then we're going to do white-collar crime, and then we're going to do intentional torts. We're going to have a lot that we're going to cover. You guys know, and I'm telling you now, for those that came in late, that it would appear that on November 15th and November 22nd, those 2 days, that we would start the class at 8 o'clock in the morning instead of at 9. We'd end at about 9:30. And if you got here at 9, you will not be penalized for being late. You would have to get the notes from someone else. Now I have, does anyone have any questions of me? Are you sure? Ron?
In civil law, when, let's say you sue somebody, don't they have to be notified and you have to prove that they were notified?
Prove they were notified, they have to be served with papers, yes.
So like, you
That's
can't
what a
find
summons
the
is.
person, I mean,
You can't find a person, you might be able to get what's called substitute service. You might ask a judge to serve someone at their last known address, or get the papers to someone of a legal age and discretion. Jason?
So what if you don't get to serve, the person never receives the?
You gotta ask a judge for substitute service. If you can't find them, you bring in an affidavit of
The
due
other way
diligence.
around,
What's that?
like if someone's being sued and they never received the document saying.
I mean, they never got the papers. The
Right.
person who sued them lied that they got the papers.
Well, I don't know about that, they never received it.
Well, then the person would have lied and said that they
Okay.
were served. When you find out about it, you would then file a motion to vacate the default, based on the fact that you were never served. And then you would contest the process server who said that they served you. Yes? Judge has to determine credibility. They do a hearing, it's called a traverse hearing, to determine whether someone was sued properly. Walt, you had a question?
Oh, right, I was wondering, when you hit the hat off Ali and hit,
Linda?
I was wondering, what was it you were trying to prove again? It would act as erase
Well,
on which part?
the intent to hit Ali was transferred to Linda, and I could be convicted of assaulting Linda, though I didn't intend to hit her at all. Let's go transferred intent. My intent was transferred from Ali to Linda. Okay? We're good? All right, hang on a second, because I gotta leave first today. I'll see you guys next week. Have a great week.